At 3:45 p.m., my monitor pinged and a calendar block I didn't recognize snapped open like a mousetrap. Come to my office. R. For words, period. No subject line, no courtesy. I stared at the timestamp as if I could will it to be a mistake. 45 minutes earlier, I'd been triple-checking the transition checklist for a $42 million portfolio, the kind of move that keeps a mid-market firm fed for years. My coffee was still warm. My pulse wasn't. I rose, straightened a tie I no longer liked, and crossed a hallway of glass where everyone suddenly had something fascinating to do on their screens. No one met my eyes. It's funny how silence learns to walk. It followed me all the way to the corner office that used to belong to a man with 4 decades of market scars and a bookshelf that smelled like paper and earned wisdom. Now it smelled like lemon cleaner and ambition. The framed trade journals and crystal tombstones were gone, replaced by a neon-slick mantra, disrupt or die, and a standing desk that looked like it had been engineered by a startup promising to fix back pain and capitalism in one firmware update. She didn't look up when I knocked. Sit. The chair across from her desk sat half a foot lower than hers, a petty bit of theater I recognized from pop leadership books. Her tablet glowed in her hands as if it were a second heartbeat. In the corner, her boyfriend, a recent conversion from the wellness world, clacked at a laptop, the reflected carousel of social media thumbnails sliding across his screen like fish in an aquarium. "Afternoon, Rachel," I said, keeping my tone as neutral as distilled water. "Is there an issue with Wells? I can walk you through the concentration bands and the glide path Not about one account." She laced her fingers, finally lifting her eyes to mine. "This is about where we're going as a firm. Digital transformation. New paradigms. Aligning for scale. I have a personal rule. When someone says paradigms before they say people, watch your wallet. I'm listening." "You're competent," she said, and it landed like an insult. "But we need leaders who can think beyond old-school relationships. Automation, personalization at scale. The clients of tomorrow want dashboards, not hand-holding." I could have taken the bait. I could have told her that the clients of tomorrow call at midnight when the market dives 6% and their chest tightens in a way no app can measure. I could have told her that stewardship isn't a filter you pick. It's a habit you earn. Instead, I folded my hands. "What are you telling me?" She slid a folder across the desk. My name was on the tab, printed neatly like a label on a specimen jar. "Today's your last day," she said. "There's an offboarding package. Non-disclosure. Non-compete. 8-month severance. Assuming a smooth transition." My mouth went dry. "You're letting me go the day before a $42 million move finalizes? Tyler will shepherd it," she said, and her glance flicked toward the boyfriend as if to bless him with competence. His smile was all surface. "He's been shadowing your processes." I looked at him and saw the question he'd asked our receptionist last week. "What's a fiduciary?" "Exactly?" I looked back at her. "He's not licensed with FINRA. That's no longer your concern." Her smile never touched her eyes. "We'll have security up in an hour. Please return your badge when you leave." My brain did a stutter step between anger and arithmetic. 1 hour. 60 minutes to box 23 years. 2 kids in college. A mother in assisted living. Alimony. Mortgage. The mental spreadsheet populated itself with red numbers and deadlines. But there was also a clean, bright column labeled assets, and it held things no one here could confiscate. Judgment, pattern memory, relationships. I snapped the folder open and leafed through legalese that read like a dare. The NDA was broad where it should be specific. The non-compete, Georgia standard boilerplate. Teeth that dull if termination isn't for cause and a judge has eyesight. She mistook my silence for surrender. "Austin, do the right thing and this is painless. We don't want a scene." "I don't do scenes," I said and meant it. "Good." She clicked something on her tablet, a digital gavel. "You have 60 minutes. When I stood, the room seemed to tilt, as if the building had quietly rotated a few degrees and no one told me. On the way out, Tyler lifted a hand in what he probably thought passed for collegiality. "No hard feelings, man. Big picture." "Big picture," I echoed, and closed the door. Back in my office, the clock on the wall ticked like an auctioneer. I pulled a banker box from the closet and started an equation. What belongs to a company and what belongs to the person who did the thinking? I didn't touch client files. I didn't forward a single document. I did gather my personal notebooks, spidery handwriting filled with market weather and human weather. How a CFO's risk tolerance shrank after his bypass. How a founder's appetite for volatility spiked after her drug maker went public. I collected a mug my daughter gave me at 12 that said "World's Best Dad" in a font designed to make fathers tear up in airports. I took my own laptop, the one I used when the servers went down or when Sunday afternoons required the kind of concentration best accomplished off VPN. On that laptop lived frameworks I'd built because work leaves you with two choices: become a machine part or design better machines. At the door, security hovered. They were polite the way people are when the rules are clear. "Take your time, Mr. Crawford," one said, which was a lie dressed up as kindness. I called up my email and typed a draft I didn't send. "Rachel, if the goal is scale, you might begin by scaling humility." I deleted it. I opened another tab and checked the calendar invite for Thursday night. Dinner with the Wells team after we signed the final transfer. Kevin Rathbun's steak. 2 bottles already decanted in my imagination. I closed that too. The oddest thought came to me then. The one time I'd met Rachel's father. He'd shaken my hand with the heavy, tired grip of someone who'd traded entire seasons of his life for a company. Now he'd traded again, this time for a promise, and promises have a way of overdrafting accounts. The countdown hit 40 minutes. I walked the box down the hallway, past faces angled toward monitors with religious intensity. People who'd once texted me at 11 p.m. about a client's cash management ladder now wanted to learn invisibility. Fine. I was learning something, too. How to exit without burning the ground behind you, and how to remember the exits if a fire started anyway. Back in the room, I signed where the sticky flags told me to sign. I read slowly. I asked calm, tiny questions in the way of a man measuring a suit he intends to outgrow. No one hurried me because hurrying would have looked like guilt. When I slid the folder back, she nodded as if I'd passed a test she hadn't studied for. "Badge." I placed it on the desk. "Keys are on facilities ring," I said. A ridiculous sentence that made this feel like a sitcom where a character moves to a new city and never writes again. In the lobby, the portraits of the Hamilton men watched me leave. Their oil-painted eyes still convinced lineage and luck were synonyms. Outside, the late-day sun turned the glass towers on Peachtree into a line of coins catching light. I loaded the box into my trunk and sat behind the wheel, hands quiet on the leather, listening to my own breath like a metronome. Here's what they thought they'd taken. My seat, my email, my 79 passwords, my place in the morning meeting where we speak in numbers as if numbers have souls. Here's what they didn't know how to count. The phone numbers in my actual phone, the kind that bypass reception and voicemail trees, the way certain clients inhale right before they admit what they're actually afraid of, the muscle memory of moving people through panic into prudence. Those aren't in the file room. Those live in a person. My screen lit again. A text from Tony, a colleague who knows where bodies are buried because we spent years building the cemetery together. Heard. Emergency partner MTG Mon. Tyler transitioning to senior role. Brace yourself. I didn't answer. The NDA was vague enough to be a tripwire, and I had no interest in being the fool who stepped on it. I drove home through the last stretch of rush hour, the city a blend of taillights and the stubborn blue of early evening. In my office, I set the box on the floor, sat down still wearing the suit I'd planned to be photographed in with a smiling client and a signed transfer. The house sounded like what it was. A place in between seasons. One kid back at Georgia Tech, the other at her mother's this week. The refrigerator hummed like it had secrets. I opened my laptop, not the firm's, mine, and started a different list. Not violations, not provocations. Inventory. What's mine to use? What's mine to know? What's mine to wait on? There's a way to wage a clean war. You do nothing dirty, and you let gravity do the heavy lifting. You give it time. At 5:59 p.m., I turned on a lamp and watched the light catch in the brass bezel of a clock I've had since my first promotion. I don't pray much, but I do believe in timing. I believed in it then more than ever. If I was going to move, I'd do it like I do everything else. deliberately, documentably, and without a single step I couldn't defend to a judge, a journalist, or my own kids. The clock ticked over to 6 o'clock. Somewhere across town, someone was drafting a news release about modernization and agility. Somewhere else, a compliance analyst was opening an email she didn't have the training to interpret. And somewhere very close, here, I started writing down an outline that did not include revenge as a line item, only outcomes. Stability for clients who wanted stewardship. Air for a man who'd had the door closed on him mid-sentence. Proof, ultimately, that noise and leadership are different animals. My pen hovered above the page. 1 hour to pack. 30 days to wait. After that, we'd see who still believed dashboards could hold a hand. The first weekend after the firing moved like molasses. Slow, sticky, and impossible to escape. On Saturday morning, I woke up before the alarm, still half expecting the buzz of my phone, with overnight market updates. Old habits die harder than hope. The coffee tasted like cardboard. Maybe because it wasn't from the machine at the office, or maybe because the air of "you're replaceable" still lingered in my throat. I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by paperwork from 23 years of my life. Certificates, thank you notes from clients, scribbled diagrams of market cycles. My cat wandered across a pile labeled personal frameworks, brushing her tail against my wrist like she knew I was deciding which version of myself to keep. I wasn't going to steal anything. I didn't have to. What mattered most was already part of me. By noon, I'd opened a folder labeled Legacy Tools, my collection of spreadsheets and algorithms built across decades. They weren't company property. The code, the formulas, even the risk-weight models, all written on my own time on my own machine. I renamed the directory Blueprints, encrypted it, and backed it up twice. One copy in cloud storage, one on an external drive locked inside my gun safe. Then came the second phase, relationships. I scrolled through my personal phone. No corporate contacts. No shared CRM. Just numbers I'd earned. Patricia Wells. Jim Thompson. Sarah Martinez. CEOs, CFOs, family office managers. 32 in all. Each name carried a memory. Late-night calls during market crashes. Whispered fears about layoffs. Moments where my job wasn't just math but empathy. They weren't accounts. They were people who trusted me when algorithms couldn't. I could almost hear Rachel saying, "Clients of tomorrow want automation." No, they don't. Clients of tomorrow want someone to answer at 2 a.m. when the Dow futures collapse. I opened LinkedIn, hovered over the Edit Headline button, and typed, "Independent wealth consultant, portfolio strategy and risk management." No mention of Hamilton Private Wealth. No violations, no invitations, just a signal flare. Then I logged off, locked my phone, and went for a walk. Monday came with the smell of rain and headlines about market volatility. Ironic, considering my personal life had just gone through one. I spent the morning studying Georgia's employment statutes. Non-competes, NDAs, arbitration precedents. I highlighted lines like a man memorizing scripture. Termination without cause weakens enforceability. That sentence alone felt like a lifeline. At 11:13 a.m., my inbox pinged with a message from Tony Rodriguez. Subject line, "Inside Scoop, Emergency Partners Meeting." Rachel announced Tyler as acting senior advisor. Board looked stunned. Compliance already raising questions about licensing. "Keep your head down, man." I didn't reply, but I did start a timeline in my notebook labeled "Sequence of Events" for counsel if needed. Dates, times, witnesses, every piece of information that might matter later. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning precision. By midweek, the noise inside the firm started leaking out. Small talk in financial circles moves faster than money. My phone lit up with discreet messages. "Heard you left Hamilton? Exploring new opportunities? Would love to pick your brain." I said the same phrase to everyone. "I'm taking a breather. Maybe a consulting route later." It wasn't a lie, just a seed. 3 weeks passed. I stayed quiet, deliberately invisible. Every night I documented what I called the 30-day clean window. Proof that I had respected every rule they'd thrown at me. That was my invisible armor. Then came the morning that changed the rhythm. 6:45 a.m., call from Sarah Martinez. CFO of Atlanta Holdings. Her voice was steady but tight. Austin, I know you can't discuss Hamilton business, but we just got a compliance notice from FINRA. Tyler filed something called an optimized response, but our counsel says it's missing key sections. They're threatening a $2 million penalty. I felt my pulse slow, the way it does when you see a car accident happening in slow motion. Sarah, officially I can't comment, I said carefully, but as a friend, find specialized counsel immediately. Today. Don't wait for internal responses. Can you look at the notice? Just as a friend? Forward it. 5 minutes later, the PDF hit my inbox. I skimmed, jaw tightening. Tyler had answered a 16-page regulatory questionnaire with a 3-line template clearly generated from some compliance AI tool. The ratios didn't even match the latest diversification rules. 6 days until the remediation deadline, an impossible timeline. I typed back, get external help now. This isn't paperwork. It's exposure. I didn't charge her. I didn't advise. I just pointed her toward survival. By noon, 2 more calls came. Same story, different clients. By Thursday, 11. Each time I stayed within the lines. No solicitation, no consulting contracts, just human decency wrapped in plausible deniability. But inside, something colder took root. They were burning the house down from the inside. Week 4. The Atlanta Financial Planning Association meeting at the Commerce Club was buzzing like a trading floor before an IPO. I'd been attending those gatherings for 18 years, but this one felt different. Eyes followed me like they do when the market senses insider knowledge. Crawford, Jim Foster called out across the room. 61, silver hair, sharp eyes, founder of Foster & Associates, a boutique firm with teeth. Heard Hamilton lost a few whales. You open for consulting work? Not yet, I said with a polite smile. Still letting the ink dry. He grinned. Smart man. But when you're ready, my door's open. That night, back home, I opened a spreadsheet titled Transition Possibilities. Row 1 read after 30-day window expires. Explore partnerships. Row 2 read clients will find you if you keep the path clean. Then I added a final line in bold. Revenge equals irrelevant. Results equals everything. Day 30 arrived like a finish line and a starting gun at once. My LinkedIn notifications exploded. Dozens of messages from colleagues and ex-clients. Can we talk? Need your insight. Our board's asking for independent guidance. I waited 6 more hours just to be sure, then made one phone call. Jim, it's Austin Crawford. You said your door was open. He laughed. Come in Monday morning and bring your clubs. We'll talk business over 9 holes. I hung up, leaned back in my chair, and looked around my home office. Papers neatly stacked, coffee mug polished clean. My reflection in the window looked different now. Not a man who'd been fired, but a man who'd been unshackled. Hamilton Private Wealth thought they'd buried me under policy and ego. What they didn't realize was that I'd already started drawing the blueprint for something better, slower, steadier, built on competence instead of slogans. The next phase wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about gravity, letting the foolish fall on their own while I built higher ground. And by the look of things, gravity was already doing its job. Monday morning sunlight spilled through the lobby windows of Foster & Associates, soft and amber, not like the cold glass glare of Hamilton's tower. The receptionist smiled as if she meant it. That alone told me this firm was built differently. Jim Foster met me at the door of his office, sleeves rolled, reading glasses perched halfway down his nose. Austin Crawford, he said, shaking my hand with genuine weight. About damn time you stopped fixing other people's mistakes and started building your own fortune. His office looked like someone actually worked there. Papers on the desk, not props. Coffee stains, not coasters. Behind him, instead of motivational posters, there were framed letters from clients, each with handwritten notes of gratitude, the kind of proof automation can't fake. I appreciate the invitation, Jim, I said. But before we talk positions, I have to be clear. Hamilton's legal team will look for any reason to claim I violated the non-compete. Jim leaned back, smiling like a man who'd heard that tune before. They already called. Rachel herself said any firm that touches you would face litigation. I told her Foster and Associates doesn't respond well to threats, especially from people playing CEO in daddy's suit. I couldn't help the grin that broke through. That'll make her blood pressure spike. Good, Jim said. Let's talk logistics. He pulled out a folder labeled Proposal, Crawford Integration Plan. Inside was an outline so detailed it could have been written by me. Senior advisor, he said. Non-partner, at least initially, keeps you clear of legal heat. You'll get a 70-30 split on any new clients you bring. We'll cover compliance and litigation if Hamilton takes a swing. He paused. You'll have autonomy, Austin. You've earned it. But I need one thing from you. Clean hands. No gray lines. No skeletons. Jim, I said quietly. I've spent the last month watching incompetence destroy itself. I don't need to lift a finger to make them fall. I just want to do this right. He nodded once. Then we're on the same page. That first week at Foster's felt like coming up for air after years underwater. The team was smaller, sharper, built on trust instead of politics. Compliance meetings didn't feel like interrogations. They felt like collaboration. I set up in a corner office overlooking Peachtree, not the biggest one, but with a view that reminded me why patience pays. Every folder on my desk was mine to earn, not defend. By Wednesday, the phone started ringing. The first call was Sarah Martinez again. Austin, it's officially a nightmare. FINRA escalated our penalty. $4.8 million now. Tyler filed another response, something about dynamic rebalancing algorithms. Can you? Sarah, I interrupted gently. You remember that contact I gave you? Use him. Today. I already did, she sighed. He said whoever's handling your old firm's compliance shouldn't even be in the room. Austin. Thank you. I hung up, leaned back, and let out a slow breath. I wasn't violating anything. I wasn't poaching. I was watching gravity do the work again. By Friday, 3 more firms reached out. Not official consultations, just friendly conversations. Every single one mentioned the same words, Hamilton and mess. At the weekly briefing, Jim dropped a thick folder onto my desk. Read this. Inside were copies of public filings, emails forwarded by panicked CFOs, and one unsigned memo marked confidential internal Hamilton strategy. It had leaked. The memo outlined Rachel's grand digital evolution. It was jargon soup, AI portfolio curation, next-gen client engagement ecosystems, with one glaring omission, compliance oversight. They'd replaced 2 senior auditors with automation leads and a project manager from Tyler's old wellness company. Jim tapped the page. This is what happens when buzzwords run a balance sheet. The industry's watching, Austin. If this keeps up, we'll be catching their clients like rain. I looked down at the memo. No, Jim. Not catching. Catching would mean we're waiting under their cloud. Let's build an umbrella. He raised an eyebrow. Meaning? I'll host an open workshop, I said. No solicitation, no branding war. Just a public session on risk mitigation and portfolio compliance under new regulations. Anyone can attend. Free. Even Hamilton if they're smart enough. Jim chuckled. You're going to beat them with education. Exactly, I said. You can't sue someone for teaching basic competence. The workshop went live 2 weeks later under the headline, Modern Compliance in a Digital Age, Navigating Risk Responsibly. We streamed it online, shared it through professional forums. No ads, no sales pitch, just clear strategy. Over 100 attendees joined the webinar. Nearly half were former Hamilton clients using pseudonyms. The chat blew up with questions like, is it true firms can delegate compliance to AI? And, what are the new FINRA diversification ratios? I answered every question calmly, referencing public data and official rulings. Never my old employer, never private information. But anyone with half a brain could connect the dots. By the end of the session, my inbox was full again. Not from prospects, from people thanking me for speaking sense. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with a call I'd been expecting and dreading. Crawford. The voice was gravel now, older. Charles Hamilton. Mr. Hamilton, I said evenly. How are you holding up? Not well, he admitted. 18 clients have terminated agreements in the last month. Rachel's insisting this is part of a market shift, but I've been in this business long enough to know hemorrhaging when I see it. I stayed silent. He sighed. Austin, we need to talk. Name your terms. Partnership, your own division, whatever it takes. Just come back. I'll fix this with Rachel. Sir, I said, my tone cooling. You can't fix what you won't admit. She replaced qualified professionals with slogans. You let her. I warned about this 6 months ago. You remember the internal memo about compliance redundancies? You dismissed it as pessimism. He didn't respond for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked with something that might have been regret. I built that firm from nothing. I won't watch it die. It's already dying, sir, I said softly. But it's dying honestly. You let the market do what it always does. Reward competence, punish arrogance. There was a long silence. Then he said, almost in a whisper, good luck, Austin. You too, Mr. Hamilton. When I hung up, I didn't feel triumphant. Just sad. The man had given 40 years to an empire he no longer understood. Rachel's revolution had cost him his legacy, and she didn't even know it yet. 2 weeks later, the real implosion hit. Channel 2 Atlanta broke the story. Hamilton Private Wealth under investigation for compliance negligence. The footage showed Rachel outside a courthouse, flanked by lawyers, dark circles carved under her eyes. A reporter shouted, Ms. Hamilton, is it true unlicensed staff were managing multimillion-dollar portfolios? She snapped back, this is a coordinated attack by competitors, particularly one former employee, Austin Crawford. She just confirmed, on live television, that my firing wasn't for performance but for internal politics. Any legal claim they had, gone. At Foster's office, Jim was grinning like a man who just watched a checkmate unfold in slow motion. She just burned her own defense team, he said. Gravity, I replied, never fails. By month's end, 25 of Hamilton's 32 major clients had either terminated or requested proposals from Foster and Associates. We didn't chase them. They came willingly, one by one, carrying bruised portfolios and relief in their eyes. The last email I read before leaving that Friday was from Patricia Wells. Austin, the board approved your nomination for Wealth Manager of the Year. You've earned it. Dinner next week? I'm buying. I stared at that line for a moment, smiling to myself. At 51, I'd been fired, blacklisted, underestimated, and somehow landed in the best chapter of my life. My kids were thriving. My mother's care was paid in advance for a year. My team respected me, not feared me. Hamilton's marble tower was now half empty. Lights off by 6 p.m. Rachel hadn't been seen in weeks. The market didn't mourn her. It just moved on, as it always does. And as for me, I finally understood something it took 23 years to learn. The best revenge isn't destroying what wronged you. It's building something so solid that the ruins of your past become the foundation beneath your feet. I raised a glass of bourbon that night in my quiet office and whispered to no one. Here's to competence. Here's to patience. And here's to gravity. 8 months later, the skyline of Atlanta looked different to me. Sharper, clearer, less like a prison made of glass. From my corner office at Foster and Associates, I could see the top of the Hamilton building 2 blocks away. Half the windows were dark now. A leasing sign hung on the lower floors like a silent obituary. I stood with a cup of black coffee, watching the morning fog burn off, and for the first time in years, I felt steady. Not triumphant, not angry, steady. Behind me, the office buzzed with quiet efficiency. Tony Rodriguez, my old compliance ally, now ran a small team across the hall. We didn't talk much about Hamilton, but every so often, when a new client mentioned the chaos over there, we exchanged a knowing glance and went back to work. My desk was covered in handwritten thank you notes, something most advisors don't get anymore. One from Patricia Wells, written in her careful cursive. Austin, the board voted unanimously to name you Wealth Manager of the Year. You've rebuilt our faith in this business. Next to it sat another note, One that mattered more. A text from my son. Dad, made Dean's List again. Thanks for showing me how to take a hit and come back swinging. That one stayed pinned to the corkboard above my monitor. At 10 o'clock, Jim Foster walked in without knocking, carrying 2 coffees. You've officially hit partner status, he said, dropping the folder on my desk. Unanimous vote this morning. You built your own division out of smoke and ashes, Crawford. I can't argue with results. I flipped the folder open. My name embossed in gold under senior partner. Jim smirked. You earned it the hard way, the only way that sticks. Feels strange, I said. After everything that happened. That's the thing about justice, he said, taking a sip. It doesn't show up with sirens. It shows up with silence and signatures. We both laughed. It was the kind of laughter that comes from surviving storms together. That afternoon, Tony stopped by my office holding a compliance binder. Guess who called this morning? He said. Rachel Hamilton's attorney. I looked up slowly. Still breathing. Barely. They're trying to sell what's left of the firm. A hedge fund in Chicago wants to buy their client list for pennies on the dollar. But here's the kicker. Rachel's name isn't on any of the sale documents. Her father pushed her out last quarter. I leaned back, exhaling. Charles finally pulled the plug. Tony nodded. Yeah. Word is he's retiring to Florida. Wants nothing to do with financial advising ever again. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity. The man had built an empire from scratch. But letting nepotism run it into the ground? That was a choice. Let it go, Tony, I said finally. We've already won. No reason to step on the ashes. He grinned. I figured you'd say that. That evening, I met Patricia and a few clients for dinner at the Capital City Club. The same restaurant where she'd once told me, you actually understand what keeps me up at night. This time, the conversation was lighter, talk of expansion, of employee bonuses, of trust regained. Over dessert, Patricia raised her glass. To doing business the right way, she said. I clinked mine gently. To relationships that outlast recessions. When the waiter refilled our glasses, she asked quietly, do you ever think about Rachel? I hesitated. Sometimes, but not the way people expect. I think about how close I came to becoming her. Chasing innovation so hard I forgot the human part. She nodded thoughtfully. You turned that pain into purpose, Austin. That's not revenge. That's growth. Later that night, back in my office, I took a moment to look around. The framed photo of my kids. The muted hum of the city below. The faint scent of fresh paper and ink. On the wall, I'd hung a new piece of art. A photo of a sunrise over the Peachtree Golf Club, taken after my first round as a free man. Underneath it, etched into the frame, were the words I'd come to live by. The highest form of revenge is competence done long enough and clean enough that even your enemies have to respect it. I smiled, closed my laptop, and poured a small bourbon. Outside, Atlanta pulsed with quiet ambition. Somewhere out there, a new generation of digital disruptors was drafting their next big idea, convinced they'd reinvent finance with buzzwords and code. Let them try. I'd learned that disruption without wisdom is just chaos with better branding. And when the dust settles, the world always circles back to the people who still pick up the phone, who still remember your kids' names, who still understand that money is just another form of trust. At 9:07 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Austin, it's Charles. Don't respond. Just wanted to say you were right. Take care of what's yours. I set the phone down, staring at the message for a long moment. Then I deleted it. Not out of spite, but closure. The truth was simple. Rachel and Charles had already written their final chapter. Mine was still being drafted. A week later, standing in front of my new team during our first division meeting, I began with one sentence. Every client who walks through that door gives us something rarer than money. Trust. Don't ever automate that. They nodded, pens ready, eyes sharp. I felt the same electricity I used to feel in my 20s, before bureaucracy dulled the edge. As the meeting ended, Jim clapped me on the shoulder. Feels good, doesn't it? Better than I expected, I said. Like I finally built something that can outlive the noise. He smiled. That's the goal. Outside, the evening air carried the faint smell of rain and streetlight heat. I walked to my car slowly, breathing it in, no rush, no bitterness. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing success or proving a point. I was simply where I was meant to be. The Hamilton building loomed faintly in the distance, a ghost of ambition. I nodded toward it once, a silent farewell. Then I turned, got in my car, and drove home to a life that was finally mine again.